What's up? We are back. I know we took a week off. There wasn't
Well, you
much
took
going
a week
on.
off. I was working. You were down there getting yourself all like primp and
Yeah,
like
little clean
whatever.
shaven. Yeah, I was down in the
Yeah,
Keys seeing my dad, my son's last kind of hurrah before he goes back to college. My older one, the younger one's last kind of hurrah. He started
before
high
going back
school
to
today.
school.
Yeah, he's going. He went to school this morning. So both are sophomores, one at college, one in high school. So
There you go.
uh, God willing, we'll have two graduations, one from high school, one from college a few years from now. So that'll be
There you
fun.
go.
But the Dirty South, we're back. I mean, what a cool week. We had the Olympics going on, so that was fun to kind of tune in for that. America did bring home some hardware. The girls were unbelievable. Um, the boys, I know people feel like gold or bust, but they brought home some hardware. They looked good too. But yeah, I know they
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I look. The truth is, Japan overshadowed everybody. I
it
mean,
was
they
and
were
not,
unbelievably good.
yeah, I mean, the girl that beat Kennedy in the finals, that was a close match, a 4-2 match. But for the most part, Japan just didn't beat people. They beat their asses. Like it wasn't even close. I mean, it was unbelievable. They looked great. Whatever they're doing you know, I think two places. We need to go to Japan and see what they're doing in freestyle, and we need to go to Cuba, see what they're doing in Greco.
Yeah, Lopez. Although, I mean, man, 5 gold medals. How awesome is that? Woo,
Oh man,
woo.
God, guy's unbelievable.
I was
Um,
just I was just talking to Lucas, and Lucas was telling me he actually wrestled in 6 Olympics.
oh wow, I didn't know that.
He wrestled in six. I didn't know that either. He was telling me, and he took fifth his first Olympics, and then won 5 golds. Like what?
Pretty damn good.
Yeah, no
But
doubt.
man, we've got some. So obviously, congratulations to all of the Americans, whether you were on a USA team, whether you were on your country's team. Um, Congratulations to those Americans that medaled, and congratulations to all those Americans around the world that competed for USA, Mexico, Puerto Rico, and whoever else that got to be Olympians. So good for you guys.
Pretty
Um,
cool. Pretty
pretty
cool.
cool. Yeah, just to
Yeah.
say for the rest of your life, I was an Olympian is pretty badass, and pretty cool. But we got next week. We've got. Um, by the way, I wore my Blue Ridge, Georgia hat today to shout out Georgia. Georgia, we're only talking Florida today because we're talking about the Hall of Fame coming up next week. So I apologize. We'll get back to Georgia the following week, and I'll talk about you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But
But we're actually talking about some monumental things. We were talking about the Olympics before,
yep.
and now we're going to spend the rest of the show talking about a huge accomplishment. And honestly, this is super cool. I want to do this actually in every single one of the states,
Yeah,
but the
let's
only
do it.
one that I really know a whole lot and have a really good connection with is the state of Florida with Gary Townsend and the Florida chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. And it's super cool the way they do it. They introduce them at the state tournament. The induction ceremony is here in a week and a half. You're going to be covering it.
Yes,
It's
sir.
it's pretty cool to watch that process. Now, before we're going to go through all the different inductees and talk a little bit about them, but I want to make sure that you guys hold on to the end of this show because I had an opportunity to talk to Bob Walker and Gary Townsend about what the difference between Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame is and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Florida chapter is. And honestly, you and I have had this conversation many times
Yes,
before. So hold on to the end, and we're going to delve into that a little bit.
the difference. Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people have those questions, and we've been
Right.
briefed a little bit. They've made some postings, but I'm super glad that you got that interview, and we're gonna have that at the end of the show for you. So
Yeah.
stay tuned for that. But first of all, congratulations to Mike Peterson, Sal Basil, Michael Graham, uh, Gerald Ryan,
Uh, Patrick Wright.
Patrick Ryan. Sorry, Patrick Ryan. I was reading your bio. It talked about a lot of, oh, you were born to Gerald and Catherine Ryan. Good job, Patrick. Thank you,
James,
Gerald. And thank you, Gerald and Catherine, for having Patrick because he's a great asset. Rylan Wagner, Daniel Williams, and James
Daniel,
Daly. So
Daniel Moody.
Daniel William Moody, by the way. Daniel Williams is a wrestler at the Navy. Sorry. Shout out to Daniel Williams, but Daniel William Moody. So yeah, of course I make this show interesting because I'm a dumbass. But and I read quite quickly, so I couldn't see.
His mouth works faster than his brain sometimes.
Yes, it's true. It's true. It's true.
You know, one of the things that's really cool about, and as we go through each one of these just briefly, because I mean, honestly, we're not going to get into talking about them. I know some of them personally. I don't know others of them personally. But one of the things that's cool is to see how involved all of them have been at different aspects of the sport in growing the sport over a long period of time. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and like you said, they do a big thing right before the final round at the state tournament, where they announce all these folks, and we got to take pictures of them, and it was really cool. But again, congratulations, John Button.
And honestly, like, so a lot of people are like, you know, this and that, and you're there to watch a kid wrestle, and I get that, and all those sorts of things. But what I would say is, without these individuals putting in the time, the effort, money, whatever, over 20, 25, 30 years of service to the sport, the state tournament wouldn't be what it is today without these individuals. So while, yes, sometimes it takes a minute and it could be probably a more streamlined process and everything else, I think it's great that we take a few minutes to recognize their service.
Absolutely. And because I talk too much, I'm going to say the name and you say what it means.
I'll try because I don't know them all, but that sounds good.
Because I'll get into way too much and then we won't get off here. But so outstanding American is going to be Mike Peterson. Talk about Mike Peterson. Obviously, not only did he wrestle, but he was a proud member of the Marine Corps.
Yeah, and is it Peterson or Pedersen?
We could say congratulations, Mike Peterson / Pedersen, and then we'll get it right.
So one of the things I think that stands out, obviously we have connections to, like I said before, to the sport, but he is being awarded, Mike's being awarded the Outstanding American part of this class. Every class has one. And if you read his bio, it's pretty impressive just outside of the sport. I mean, Mike has been an assistant coach at Mariner for a long time, but before that, he was a Marine Corps major and like has served the United States military in some fantastic, some interesting places. And I mean, a Marine Corps pilot went to the Naval Academy. That's some pretty cool stuff, dude. That's like Top Gun thing. You know what I mean?
By the way, not only do you not want to wrestle him, you don't want to box him either. He was an outstanding boxer at the Naval Academy. So great guy. We look forward to hearing his story. And this isn't the time for that. We just want to give you some briefness on it. The next slide I have up is Sal Basil, over at Tampa Jesuit, obviously been in our state a long time. Talk about Sal.
Yeah. So I want you, before I get into talking about Coach Basil, I want you to give me one memory you have about Coach Basil. So, because you know Coach Basil.
Yeah, first of all, he's always come up and welcomed me, and always he's always been very forthcoming to me and a great guy. But one that sticks out in my mind is him working the corner and being there with his older son and watching his younger son win the state title before going off to the Army, and having all three of them there together to kind of have that moment with each other is a pretty cool moment that I have. Another one is watching two Fargos ago, watching him and his son coach together at Fargo was a pretty awesome moment for me too.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Coach Basil um, began, I believe, at Springstead under Coach Bob Levia. Coach Coach Bob was like a thing in Springstead. I mean, he was Springstead wrestling for a long, long time. One of the things as I was reading Coach Basil, and I've known Coach Basil for quite a while now. One of the things that stood out to me that I didn't know was that he coached as an assistant from 95 to 99, back when I was coaching as an assistant. So that's how I knew him there. Um, and he stepped away to focus on his family and earn state championships with the Springstead High School drum line. I was like, what? Who knew that? I didn't know that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so not only can he wrestle, he can step too.
but obviously, if you are a recent member of the community, right? You know Coach Basil because of he and Coach Mason at Tampa Jesuit. They have built a formidable power down in Tampa at Jesuit High School. They are the defending traditional state champions. And man, they just keep getting better and better and better. And it's just fun to watch the two of them in the corner coaching the kids up.
Yeah. And by the way, this coach is at the Hall. I mean, this will be my fourth time at the Hall of Fame. He's there every year helping Gary Townsend and the crew, helping them set up, helping. He's always volunteering. He's always in the room welcoming all the Hall of Famers. Now he gets to be one of them. So congratulations to him.
Absolutely.
So another guy going in, Michael Graham, wrestling at Cutler Ridge. And I'm sure he did a lot more, but I'll let you have the honors.
Yeah, so I don't remember him from Cutler Ridge. I think that was a middle school in the Miami area back in the day. I remember Coach Graham from his time at Palmetto and specifically under Coach Soderholm, and it's specifically his time at Southridge under Coach Husk. Definitely one of those individuals who has been part of the Dade County family wrestling family for a long, long time. And one of the things that stood out to me when I was looking over his bio was he became, well, when his son won the state title in 2001, one of the two of those, they became the second father-son duo to win it in the state of Florida. And my question to everybody is, who's the first?
Please post that in the comments below.
So congratulations to Coach Graham. Coach Graham has been around for a long time. I kind of consider Coach Graham to be a little bit, I don't see, like, he's a little more kind of quiet, and he's not, I mean, I guess if you're standing next to Coach Husk and Coach Husk is yelling, everybody sounds quiet, but definitely talking to the kids. I remember him talking to the kids and kind of coaching them up and those sorts of things, but he wasn't necessarily an outspoken, kind of gregarious necessarily individual, but obviously looking through his bio has had a ton of success. Congratulations to him on being inducted.
Oh, and Miami Palmetto, home of the legendary Cabra Wrestling.
Is that right? Is that where he went to school?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There it is. Now you know.
All right. Who do we got next?
All right. Next up is actually the one, the only Patrick Ryan from Venice.
So Coach Ryan, when my context is back in the early or late 1990s, early 2000s. Coach Ryan was the assistant coach at Venice High School forever. I mean, maybe 20 or 30 years. I mean, he was the the assistant coach there for 20 years. He was there for a long, long time. He's now been there for 30 years and it took over as the head coach at Venice High School. But, if you look through the different, awards that Venice has won, the number of times that they have been in, the running for a state title, all the different things over the last 30 years, that has to do with a lot of the work that Coach Ryan has done. And Coach Ryan, if for those of you who don't know, I think it's always flip-flops, right? Always flip-flops. And that goes back for as long as you can remember. So definitely well-deserving. And congratulations to him on his induction.
Up. Surfs up.
It certainly seems that way. I don't know him that way, so I don't know.
And please, I don't know who it is. I was reading he has had a state champion. If
who was
post it in the comments.
Who was the Venice state champ? I could go back in my head.
I do. Isn't that where? Oh, I'm having a brain fart. He won the state championship this year.
This year? For Venice?
For Venice. Yep.
I'm sorry, guys.
I am having a terrible.
Dan threw it at me right there, and off the top of my head, I cannot tell you who it is.
I am having a terrible, and I love her. I love her mom. I love the family. Her mom is prevalent on social media.
Oh, Milana Borelli.
Milana Borelli.
Okay, I wonder if he's had a boys state champion though. Trying to think. Venice has had some studs, and I don't off the top of my head I can't
Mrs.
remember.
Borelli, I'm so sorry for forgetting your name. What happened is when I shaved, it took my brain cells with me.
There were no brain cells to go with him. It doesn't matter. All right.
There you go. Well,
who else we got?
Ryland Wagner, not Rulon Wagner. Ryland Wagner.
Ryland Wagner. So
Gainesville High School.
I know Ryland exceptionally well. Ryland, I remember back coaching against Ryland when Ryland was in the state finals. I think he lost to Corey Hill from Springstead in the state finals. But the thing that always stood out to me with Ryland is, and although he took over and all those sorts of things, but even before he took over, he was a college student, and he was doing so much for the Gainesville High School program. He would fundraise, he would be at every single tournament, he would be doing everything in his power to help. And I was coaching at Buchholz for part of that time, and we were crosstown rivals, but at the Boys and Girls Club of Alachua County, with Jeff Davis, we started the Gainesville Takedown Wrestling Club. And I'll tell you what, Ryland was there all the time coaching the next crew. And I'll tell you what, that hard work paid off, because from early 2000s through 2010, 2012 or so, Gainesville High School was a force. They were a force. And one of the reasons that they were a huge force within the state was because of the work that Ryland did. And whether they grew to that level or not, he was such an important piece to North Florida wrestling and its growth and everything else. I can't say enough about Ryland.
And I can't wait to hear his story when he speaks about it next week at the Hall of Fame. If you haven't got tickets, go get some, show up, have a good time. By the way, the young lady, Miriam Jenkins, who he coached and mentored, has had a absolute incredible life. So he's had definitely some great people there. Not Daniel Williams, but Daniel William Moody.
Moody
is next up, and congratulations to him. Tell us about Moody.
Yeah, so I don't know Coach Moody as well as I know some of the other ones, primarily because I think it was more down in Palm Beach County where most of his work was done. He wrestled up in Jersey, won a Jersey state title, ended up wrestling at Slippery Rock in, I believe Pennsylvania. I believe Slippery Rock's in Pennsylvania. Could be wrong. In the in late 1980s, early 1990s. But then, like so many Northerners do, headed to the state of Florida, ended up 2 years at Miramar Western High School, and then spent the bulk of his time, I believe, at Royal Palm Beach High School down. And honestly, again, it's a pretty common thing to watch amongst the Hall of Famers. The number of their kind of step their process through, being an assistant coach or being a young head coach, number of years being spent in coaching. Really, I mean, look, you go through years where you have great teams, and then there are times when your teams you got a new group of kids and they're trying to learn how to do things. And I'm sure you spend lots of time taking some lumps, but the amount of time and effort that they spend putting in, and Coach Moody put in to those kids, it's not always about winning titles. It's about, the character and everything else from wrestling that is so awesome that they have the impact on their athletes. So.
Absolutely. And congratulations to him. Again, can't wait to hear his story Friday and Saturday over at the event. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Last one going in, another amazing dude, Mr. James Daly.
Yeah. So do you know Coach Daly?
I've met him personally at the state tournament, and then he's messaged me a few times privately for some stuff, but that's the extent.
So Jim Daly, Coach Daly, for those of you who don't know, so I think of Coach Daly from Port St. Lucie back in the late 1990s. I'm not sure how long he ended up staying at Port St. Lucie. I know he was there with some of the kids and they wrestled, man. Those were some tough kids. Those were some kids that we encountered that were super tough. They were always ready to come. But Coach Daly spent part of his time in Ohio, part of his time in Florida. And again, if you look through his bio, the one thing that kind of sticks out to me is, again, what kind of sticks out amongst everyone. And that is Coach Daly wore a lot of different hats for the wrestling community, did lots of different things. Not only coaching, did some officiating, did some other different things that play a huge role in the growth of the sport. So congratulations to Coach Daly. Congratulations to all of the Hall of Famers. Such an outstanding accomplishment.
Yeah, can't wait to spend the weekend with them. I'll be Gary Townsend has a schedule for me to be able to sit with them and do interviews. They're just going to be just a quick interview. What we've done the last few years is I ask them a simple question, kind of what does it mean to you to be inducted into the Hall of Fame? And we get that cool answer. And then during while we're eating dinner, prior to kind of everything happening, we put it up on the TV in the corner, and people get to listen to their passion a little bit. It's a quick 2-minute thing, and it's pretty fun, pretty cool. So yeah, I can't wait to do that. I know I haven't heard from you yet. You said you may be there, you may not be there, but if you do make it, it'll be good to see you. If you don't make it, it'll be good not to see you.
I'm going to try. I owe Ryland. I don't owe Ryland to come, but I want to be there for Ryland and for everyone. But I want to be there for Ryland. It is a matter of juggling a couple of different things. I don't live in the state of Florida any longer, so it is a trek in for me. But if I can make it, I will definitely be there, and it'll be. It's always a blast. It's always such a great event. National Wrestling Hall of Fame, Florida chapter does a great job. So
yeah, Gary Townsend and his team put in a lot of work. His wife puts in a lot of work, and then all the volunteers and the Hall of Famers and their wives. It's amazing the work they put in over that weekend, and not just that weekend, but all year leading up to it. So thank you to him and his crew, and congratulations to all the Hall of Famers. I know that a few months back, they had the Florida Hall of Fame induction ceremony. It's the second annual one. I wasn't able to make it this year as I was out of town for my son, but they got the better version of the Dirty South podcast. they got Jason this year, and he went to that, and it seemed to be a great thing. But I know the one thing that's been curious to the public, I think, and they've kind of publicly tried to say this, and even me, I was a little confused. We've had that conversation. You were a little confused, so that made you sit down with Gary and Bob and say, "Hey, what's going on here? What's the differences?" Great, glad you guys are doing it both, but explain to us, and we have that interview for you.
Yeah.
And we're gonna take a few minutes and let you kind of watch that, and then we'll come back.
Yeah,
absolutely. So enjoy the interview.
All right. I'm here with Gary Townsend, president of the Florida chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame.
That's correct. First of all, I have a disclaimer.
Okay, Gary, go ahead.
Okay, number one, we don't like each other. Okay, so if this interview gets lucky or gets ugly, you understand why.
Yes, sir. I totally understand. No problem.
It's up to you, big boy.
And Bob Walker, who is the chairman of the Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Yes, sir.
So I think the let's start with the Florida chapter, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. When did it start?
It started in 1999.
1999.
That's correct.
And how did it come to be?
It came to be, actually, it was brought to us a couple of years earlier that they were starting to recognize chapters in different states through the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. And it was brought to us, and they asked us if we'd be interested. At the time we were, but it was one of those things that just kind of drifted off and not happened. Bob came to me back at one of our FAWA state conferences and said, "Hey, we got a guy here from the National and we need to get this thing going." So Bob and I sit down and we put together a board back in 1999, and it started from there.
All right, so 25 years of existence.
This was our 25th anniversary this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Bob, on the Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame side, this is just the second class of the Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame. It's a much newer phenomenon and a much newer group. So why is it trailed in a number of years? So it's only the second year.
It's a good question. Probably no one just came up with the idea or had the initiative to get started. There's been a lot of confusion between our two organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Gary's organization honors coaches, volunteers, officials. Our organization recognizes wrestlers for their accomplishments.
Now, is it wrestlers just based upon, say, they're wrestling in the state of Florida, or is it wrestlers as they extend beyond the state of Florida and into college and beyond?
We judge their entire wrestling career, and we have several categories. You have a category for wrestlers that had great accomplishments in high school wrestling, like Glenn Goodman and PJ Cobbert, who were Florida's first two 4 times high school state champions. Mm-hmm. But then we also recognize their collegiate and Olympic style accomplishments also.
So Gary, I've noticed that if we were to kind of compare the different classes, and I see the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Florida chapters inductees every year, a lot of coaches, like this last year, you had Sal Basil, you had Ryland Wagner, those sorts of individuals, but not necessarily a whole lot of wrestlers. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, the National preserves the right to honor wrestlers. They request that we only honor individual coaches, officials, and contributors. And what I mean by contributors, people who volunteer. Like myself, I've never wrestled, but I've been a volunteer for 33 years. Mm-hmm. So, and then we have other categories like Outstanding American and Honor of Merit.
Okay.
We honor merit is where we recognize a gentleman who lost both of his legs, but he still wrestled in the state of Florida. So, but these are some of the categories that we honor.
Okay, and Bob, is that the reason for the impetus of Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame?
That's exactly right. I grew up wrestling in Southern California. Went to the University of Alabama with Russ Cozart. California recognized both Russ and I over the years and inducted us into the California Wrestling Hall of Fame. So that's where I got the idea that we need to start the Florida chapter.
Got it. So, and I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm really curious. There's a lot of chapters. Does every state have a National Wrestling Hall of Fame state chapter?
Currently, yes. There's 38 chapters out of the 50 states in the nation right now, and they're working on getting all 50 states.
All right. And do many states have also a Wrestling Hall of Fame that goes like?
Probably about half the states do. It's not as popular as you might think. So that's one of our goals for the future, is to reach out to other southeastern states and try and get it going in the southeast. Alabama, Georgia, if they don't already have it going. And then, we can see where we go from there. And we're also going to reach back in Florida and try and establish a Wrestling Hall of Fame in every county that has wrestling.
Oh, wow.
So that's two of our long-term goals.
So talk to me a little bit about what you, and either one of you can answer this. What are the overlaps of the two organizations?
Well, basically, the overlaps are we both put on banquets where we honor these individuals. I think the overlap on us is the Florida chapter of Wrestling Hall of Fame, or the Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame, takes the pressure off of us in a lot of ways, because a lot of people feel like we should be honoring athletes also. Well, National doesn't recognize the fact that we should do that. So this takes the pressure off of us. We support Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame 100%, and we help them in any way that we possibly can. So that's kind of the overlap, is we support them, they support us. And like I say, they take a lot of pressure off us as far
like
as
a symbiotic relationship.
Yes,
Exactly.
absolutely.
And actually, Gary, as someone who's been around Florida for a long time, I have heard that argument of why I don't understand why this four-timer isn't necessarily in the Florida chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. And that's because your mission is very specific.
That's correct. See, we have policies and procedures we follow that are dictated by the National Wrestling Hall of Fame out of Stillwater, Oklahoma. So they lay out the guidelines of what we follow, and one of that is we do not induct athletes. That's preserved for the National Hall.
So Coach Walker, a question that I have is the process you go by which of forming your classes, because this is your second class. How are you kind of, what are some of the things that go into the picking?
Great question. We have a website. It's flwhof.com. On our website, we have a nomination form. Anyone is allowed or encouraged to submit a nomination. The guidelines is, or a person must have wrestled in the FHSAA High School State Series in order to be considered for nomination.
Okay.
And then, of course, the more accomplishments, the better. If you're going to rank wrestlers, the very top thing that a wrestler can achieve is being Olympic champion, because that's only held once every 4 years. And that includes every category from high school to collegiate to beyond collegiate. And the second most valuable achievement probably would be a world championship. Beyond that, world teams, Pan Am teams, university and ESPOR, world in teams and national teams, and on down into high school national championships, either through USA Wrestling or the other governing bodies.
So I know you guys are inducting someone tonight that is actually in the Florida chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame as well, and Chris Bono. How does Chris kind of bridge between the two?
Well, we're inducting Chris for his wrestling accomplishments.
Okay.
State championships in Florida, NCAA championships, national open championships and World Cup teams. Those are the accomplishments we're inducting Chris for.
And Gary, how about for you guys? Last year you inducted Chris.
We inducted Chris last year as a college coach.
As a college coach.
Yes, and he met the qualifications. One of the qualifications is lifetime service to the coaching and officiating, and that means they have to have at least 20 years of experience in coaching before we even can accept their nomination and recognize them. And we also have one more. Robert Wimberly is also a Hall of Fame.
Oh, he is. My apologies to Coach Wimberly.
And as he was recognized as a coach out of St. Thomas Aquinas, coaching for years. Plus, he did a lot of club coaching with FAWA and so forth.
So I would assume that there might be in the future a little bit of an overlap between the two, but not a significant necessarily
Correct.
overlap.
That's correct.
As we're wrapping this up, Coach Walker, we'll start with you. Congratulations on bringing everybody together for a second annual Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Is there anything that you want people to know about the Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame that we didn't cover?
I think you've hit the highlights very well. I want everybody to know that we strive to bring recognition to wrestling. Wrestling suffers from a lack of recognition because I think a lot of wrestling people, wrestling coaches and wrestlers are humble and they don't like to brag or bring attention to themselves. So our sport doesn't get all the publicity that I think we deserve. So it's our goal to bring publicity to the sport through recognizing outstanding individuals for their accomplishments.
Thanks, Coach. And Gary, the last question I have for you is, you have a new group coming in this fall or this August, correct?
Yes.
And you guys come together in August every year to do your induction ceremony.
We are.
Can you
Yes.
give me an idea of who's a part of that class?
We have 7 individuals coming in. We have our outstanding American is Mike Pedersen. Rylan Wagner is a coach. Michael Graham out of Miami is a coach.
And I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You don't have to. You don't have to list. You don't have to list everybody.
Yeah,
but
these are a few individuals that are coming in. Yes.
All right, and the last kind of thoughts as it relates to the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, the Florida chapter. Where do you see the next steps for you guys?
The next step, basically, we have a phenomenal board that's working and putting this to make it a premier event for us. We do a full weekend. Our next step is to continue doing what we do. I mean, we every year we get phenomenal compliments from everybody. What a fine job that our board does here. Even from national, we're very complimented. I like to feel we're one of the outstanding chapters in the country, and that's why we honor the National Hall and representation. And also, we have a wrestling museum.
You do.
We started a few years ago. I felt that we had 50 years of experience and it was time to put the museum together. We've had a phenomenal response from many of the coaches throughout the state that have retired now and so forth. Pete Collins, who's our curator, and Bob Thomas, who assists him, have done a phenomenal job in putting the museum together. We display that at our event. We display it a little bit here.
At the state tournament?
State tournament. We do a phenomenal display at the state tournament. We take up almost the whole end of the arena there and get a lot of activity up there. Our goal is to continue supporting the wrestling, supporting the development of girls wrestling, and do it wherever we can, and support the Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame. It's all about support the wrestling community, staying united, and and help wrestling grow in Florida. Florida is phenomenal in the growth of wrestling, phenomenal in the girls wrestling in Florida has been outstanding. We're putting out some outstanding athletes there.
Yeah.
And one more thing, we have a young man out of South Dade who's our Southeastern Regional winner for the Dave Schultz Award.
Yeah, Sawyer Bartell.
Sawyer Bartell, that's correct. And I believe he has a really good shot of being the Dave Schultz winner. I mean, I'm going to put myself out there. If you look at his record,
Has Florida had one previously?
I don't recall if maybe David Craig.
David
was
Craig.
the last
Craig.
one did it. That goes back quite a few years, about 15, 20 years, I think. We were talking about that last night.
Well, gentlemen, I want you to thank you for taking the time to talk to me. And I want to say, I think that both of the organizations as a whole, is exactly what you talked about, Gary, in that it really helps grow the sport, talk about the sport, and really honor the individuals within the sport on all areas
Yes.
to try to have an impact on the sport in the future.
Awesome.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
All right. So
All right.
go ahead.
Yeah.
You want me to do it?
Awesome.
You want to do it?
No, go ahead.
So the reason I wanted, actually, I asked for that interview. I wanted to know because I didn't quite understand. Okay, for a long period of time, I didn't understand how some of our best wrestlers in the state weren't members of the Florida chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. It didn't
Absolutely.
make any sense to
And
me. I mean,
every year we get the comments and we get the bulletin board material, and everybody's commenting on why isn't Joe or John or Dave or Smith or Stevie or Joe.
right.
And
I mean, Jared Frater. I mean, Chris Bono went in this past year for the Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame. Just recently, he went in a year ago for obviously the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Florida chapter. But you know, it's one of those situations that they have very distinct, as Bob and Gary said in the interview, very distinct roles of who they invite in, who is not. And being a wrestler is actually, I think what Gary said was is focused on the National Wrestling Hall of Fame at that level, not necessarily at the chapter level. And that was the impetus for the Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame to begin.
Yeah.
And
so
on and so
I'm glad that you got that interview. And yeah, you mentioned Jared Fair. There's a Scotty Sentes out there that's he was pretty damn good. And we could keep going. There's the two
just look at the first or second class of this most recently Florida Wrestling Hall of Fame. I mean, Franklin Gomez, I mean, you know, Josh Lambrick, you know, I mean, we could go down to Eric Rajales. Wrestling wise, there aren't better wrestlers in the state. I mean,
right.
So absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, and the two brothers that went to Virginia Tech that wrestled for Fair that were 5-timers in I mean, there's so many kids out there and adults now. And I'm sure we'll start to see them funnel in on both sides. I'm sure they'll become coaches and things like that. Hopefully the Miami Hurricanes can get ACC wrestling and we could bring Jared Fair home, because as much as he loves Virginia Tech and Joe Roby, he'd wear that orange and green.
Joe Roby?
Oh, did I say the name wrong?
Tony Roby?
That guy too.
Yeah. All right.
You know what I was thinking of? I was thinking of Joe Robbie. You know, football, South Florida.
Oh, Florida, Miami.
Yeah, you see, I messed up.
It's all good. It's all good. I will say, you know, it'll be interesting. You know, we got the knockout now featuring 4 college teams, and Central Florida now in the Big 12, I think it is, UCF.
Yes, man.
I don't know how the landscape has changed for NIL and how that's going to impact wrestling. I think it's going to impact it in a negative way, but certainly there are opportunities. Will that be anything? I don't know. I don't hold my breath.
And this is he's got to run here in a few minutes, but
I do.
You mentioned NIL. I think as we saw in the last 10 days or 20 days, we saw rule changes on scholarships, and with wrestling, you can have up to 30 athletes and you can give up to 30 scholarships, right? And part of it is you have to partake in revenue sharing. And I think the revenue sharing with the athletes, now there's still things that have to be worked out. And I think that part of it, and, there's been whispers, I think, where if you don't do the revenue sharing, then you won't be invited to the NCAA tournament. And there's things like that going on. However, hopefully the revenue sharing will subsidize some of the NIL stuff and keep athletes at home. But I think there's still things that need to be put in place, in my opinion, as far as like, if I sign an NIL, what I hated watching over the last few years of NIL, and we'll get into our ending here, and let you say something. But what I don't like about the NIL over the last few years is it's cool. Athletes pay the bills for these schools, and if you're going to subsidize them, that's fine. But what I don't like is I'm an athlete that gets offered. Maybe I'm an athlete that gets offered. I show up to your school. I have a breakout year. That's school one. Next year, I get offered a bag from other places. So now year 2, I'm at a different college, and so on and so forth. Year 3, I'm at a different college. Year 4, I'm at a different college. So I feel like, and I don't know if you remember the old college baseball rules where kind of if you signed with the college, you had to stay a certain amount of years. I feel like contracts for NIL need to be, maybe you have to do a 2-year commitment to that school or something, to the extent that keeps the doors from revolving so much, because it can. And hopefully also this revenue sharing and the NIL will also create where kids actually get their diplomas too, and they stay in the schools for all 4 years and graduate, because they have money coming in that can help keep them in college where they don't have to jump so quickly. But my 2 cents, maybe they're not, you can take a nickel and a dime and run them together and probably not get much out of my 2 cents, but
Well, I will say, so I think that there's still a lot of unknowns, right?
Right.
And NIL at this level, right? And the college landscape, and then how does it specifically impact the sport of wrestling or the Olympic sports or those sorts of things, is going to be a
Right.
whole other question. I don't think we have a whole lot of guidance yet on how all that's going to play out. I am really skeptical about it being a positive thing for the sport. But I'm willing to not be Chicken Little today, and
right.
I'm willing to allow for things to play out and see what happens. And let's just hope that things are going to head in the right direction.
Right. And speaking to a lot of some coaches I've spoke to, they think that it's mostly going to benefit the Big 5 schools. It's really not going to have a trickle down effect to a lot of the other schools, other than, maybe we might see some reduction of staff and things like this. But the thing is too, and okay, we'll get off this boat.
Well, if revenue sharing happens and you're not allowed to compete with schools that are not revenue sharing, that could be really challenging.
Well, I think you can compete during the season, but I think they won't be invited to NCAA. And I got to read more into that, but
that would be terrible for us.
I have to do that. However, also everybody came out and was like, okay, wow, 30 scholarships. That means every kid gets a scholarship. Well, I have news for everybody.
No.
If the school can't afford to give 30 scholarships, they still aren't going to be able to give 30 scholarships.
Correct.
So that's why when they say it'll help the Big 5 schools, the boosters at the Big 5 schools and the Ivy Leagues and things like that are incredible. The money flow that comes in. So they, at that level, will have the money to do some things. But when you get down to, the military academies, some of the smaller schools, the things like that, you're not going to see a lot of that go on. But we'll see. Anyway, before we leave, I know you wanted to shout out. There's some people going off to U17s, as long as U17s are still happening. I did hear some whispers today on social media and things about UWW having a meeting Wednesday. A lot of flights have been canceled because
just a real quick update, everyone. Like, U17s are supposed to happen like in a week, like in Amman, Jordan, and because of the situation in the Middle East and the tensions between Iran and Israel and the United States playing a role, and Jordan sitting right there in the middle of all of those sorts of things, there's some concern. But at the moment, the tournament, according to what you read, is still on. There's just not flights into Jordan. And I want to go ahead and say good luck to Michael Mako, Nate Askew, Piper Fowler, all from the Southeast, as they head. KJ Vasquez, who's wrestling for Puerto Rico, also from the Southeast, from Tampa Jesuit with Coach Basil, who we talked about earlier. They're headed to there if the tournament ends up happening and everything else. But
Correct.
As we are having this conversation,
there's
a lot of unknowns.
Apparently, the UWW is meeting on Wednesday, is what I was reading, and they're supposed to have discussions on what the next move is. A lot of people feel like it might be moved, and some people say a good spot to move it would be Spain, to where U20s are going to happen this year. But we'll talk about U20s in a future show, because we got some kids from the Southeast going there too. So
yep,
that'll be fun. But yeah, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you made it this far. Hope you got some questions answered about the differences between the Hall of Fames, and a little synopsis of our inductees for honors weekend next weekend. So congratulations to all them.
Yeah, congrats to them. I hope my conversation with Gary and Bob helped at least understand a little bit. Best of luck to the U17s. Dan, put some hair on your face, dude, before I see you again.
I'm working on it. What's happening?
All right, man. We'll be back next week.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool.